Good morning. We're reading The Wheel on the School by Maynard de Jong. Pictures by Maurice Sendak. And we are reading Chapter 9, The Wheel Rim. We're in the middle of that chapter, and we came to this scene where they are running toward the canal. With a doubtful look at their teacher, the boys shoved a little harder. When the teacher still made no objection, they increased the speed. Now they actually had the teacher running beside the wheelchair at a half run. He still looked good-natured about it. "Here we go," Jella warned the others out of the side of his mouth. "Look out, you mortals in Shora," he yelled out in imitation of Giannis. Giannis leaned eagerly forward against his rope, ready. The boys shoved him ahead with all their might. Now they tore down the Shora street at full speed. They went at such a pace that Dirk and Pier at the sides had all they could do to steady the bouncing, jumping wheelchair. But Giannis was shouting things at some woman they passed. Just out of Shora, Eelka had to fall out. The pace was too much for him. But he couldn't stand being left either. He came trotting on behind. All out of breath, except Giannis, they arrived at the spot in the canal where the rim had gone down. Giannis was all for starting to fish for the rim at once, but the teacher protested. "Remember, we ran all the way. Now we've got to do a little breathing," he said. "Wait till we catch our breaths. Mine's still back there in Shora." "Breathe all you like," Giannis said generously. "I'll study the situation meanwhile." He propelled himself and the wheelchair so close to the canal's edge that the alarmed teacher, who had sunk down in the grass, jumped up again to hold the chair back. Jella hurriedly grabbed one of the wheels. Dirk and Pier took the other. Now Auka came puffing up. He, too, took hold of the wheelchair. Unconcerned with all the stir and worry, Giannis began dragging with the rake. With everybody hanging onto the chair, he leaned against the rope and reached out as far as he could. After his 10th cast with the rake, he began to look doubtful. "That mud must be bottomless here. I don't know, teacher, but it looks to me like you'd better send a telegram to China. Have you guys seen a wagon wheel rim down there?" None of the boys laughed. They stared somberly into the canal. Eelka came up from behind the chair and peered along the canal. "Hey, there's the hub out there, tight against the bank." He pointed out the hub to Giannis. "You'll need the rake to get that out too," Giannis said, as he threw the rake out again. At the very next cast, the rake struck something hard. Giannis worked furiously, probing the spot, trying to get the rake to take hold of whatever it had hit. "Got it," he said at last. But what the rake brought to the surface was only an old enameled pail full of mud. In his disgust, Giannis hauled it up by the end of the rake and flung it far. "At least that's out of our way." He turned to Auka. "Here, kid," he said, "go get that hub first. We've got to try something different." "Let me do it, Auka," the teacher said, taking the rake. "I've been feeling so useless here." He hurried down the canal. The boys pulled the chair back from the canal's edge. Giannis prepared the rope. "We'll try it with the rope tied to the rake as soon as he gets back. We're going to have to go really deep, and if that rope is long enough, I'm going to get that rim out. Ought to find it with the rake on the end of the rope. Going to find it. Man, I haven't had so much fun since that shark bit off my legs." He looked blandly at Dirk and Pier. Jella's mouth fell open. Eelka stared at Giannis. "Both legs in just one bite?" he said in awe. Giannis shrugged. "Am I supposed to know how many bites?" he asked. "I wasn't looking around just then." "What did you do?" Jella said. "I kicked his teeth out, that's what I did." Pier was enjoying the solemn awe of Jella and Auka. He couldn't resist. "But he'd bitten off both your legs, you said," he pointed out to Giannis. "Did I say both at one time?" Giannis said and glared fiercely at Pier. "He was still sawing away on one old tough sea boot, so I kicked him in the teeth with the other. That's where I made my mistake. It made him so mad he just bit off the other. Then I couldn't kick him again, having no more legs left." "I hope those sea boots gave that shark a stomach ache, worse than green cherries," Pier said, looking solemnly around at all the others. "Me too," Jella said fervently. Eelka stood dithering, mouthing a question he badly wanted to ask Giannis about the shark, but Giannis saw the teacher coming back with the hub. At once he had to be pushed back to the canal and became too busy for questions. He tied the rope to the rake handle, threw the rake far out into the canal, and let it sink. Slowly he dragged in the rope. Suddenly the rake caught. "Now then," Giannis said, "hang on to the chair. That's the rim, and now it's coming up, or my name isn't Giannis." His enormous arms swelled and quivered with the strain. He began to draw the rope and rake and whatever load hung on it toward the canal bank. It was such a tug that the cords in his straining neck swelled and his arms bulged. Suddenly something snapped. They'd all been straining so hard to hold the wheelchair back, they jerked Giannis and the chair far back from the bank before they could regain their balance. The rake handle, still tied to the rope in Giannis's hands, floated on the surface of the water. "Well, there went Shore's only rake," Giannis said gloomily. No one else said a word. All stared in dismay at the rake handle in the canal. "Well, now we're just going to have to figure out something else," Giannis said. He sounded almost too cheerful about it. "Let's get back to shore. I'll rig up something some way." No one said a word. In the heavy silence, Giannis jerked his head up. "Did you hear that?" He held his hand up for silence. It came again, the sound that only Giannis had heard. The wind brought it along the canal. It sounded like screaming, like women screaming. It sounded as if the wind was bringing it from the dike at the far side of the village. Again, the wind picked up the sound. It whisked by their ears all along the quiet canal. Giannis grabbed the wheels of his chair and whirled the chair around. "Those are women. Something's wrong." His eyes shot to the weather vane on the top of the tower and then to the sun in a quick estimate of time and wind direction. "Ah," he said, "the tide's in. Most likely some sheep strayed down the dike, got themselves flooded in the tide, and now are standing there just like sheep, letting themselves drown. Let's go. We'll get the rim later." They jumped to push Giannis to the road, but as they did so, Giannis once more held up his hand in silence. "Listen," he said. For a moment there was no sound. Then came a faint clanging and jingling, but it came from the opposite direction of the screams. "Ah, it's only the Tin Man's wagon," Jella said at last. They shoved Giannis into the road. "Hold it," he said. "Wait for the wagon. It'll get us to the women a lot quicker than we can get there on foot." Down the canal road the horse and wagon came, around a bend and over the bridge in full gallop. The pots and pans danced and jangled, clattered and banged. "Hey, look," Pier said. "Isn't that Auka on the seat? He's standing up. He looks as if he's yelling at us." Auka had been sitting between the Tin Man and his wife on the high seat of the old wagon. The children had settled down in the deep wagon box among the pots and pans. The Tin Man had insisted on taking them for a long ride around Shora. The direct route down the dike road from Nest to Shora had been too short for him. Everybody deserved an outing this Saturday, he had insisted. They'd ended up on the canal road on the opposite side of Shora. As they rounded the bend in the road and came over the canal bridge, Auka caught sight of the little group at the canal. "Look," Auka yelled, "something's wrong. Somebody must have drowned. Even Giannis is there in the wheelchair." He jumped up on the seat. "Can this horse run?" he asked anxiously. "He can run that far," the Tin Man said. He slapped the lines hard across the horse's bony back. The old horse lunged ahead. With an insane jangling of tin, the wagon lurched and rattled toward the waiting group at the roadside.